RogueCon 23. That's right. It is here. It's not back. It's here. It's the first one. Join the ultimate celebration of digital content with its creators, passionate fans, and industry experts. It is all happening in downtown Waco across multiple venues, January 20th through the 22nd of 2023. Now, if you want to go, you got to get tickets, and tickets are on sale at RogueCon23.com. That's RogueCon, RogueCon 23.com. Be there. I'm going to be there. Everybody's going to be there. Let's go. Coming up on the Payoff. This is a special one for me. Doug Overton's been in my life since I was about 10 years old. First, he came into my life as one of the best basketball players in the city of Philadelphia. Played basketball at LaSalle in Philly, and then scratched and clawed his way to 12 years in the NBA before becoming a coach in the NBA and at the college level, ultimately a head coach at the college level. And then at 46 years old, he smoked his first joint. That kicked off denial, abuse, and then ultimately full-blown addiction. And his bottom was highly publicized. He had a couple incidents with Philadelphia police over the course of about a year, and he checked into treatment. And then the comeback began. And this is an inspirational story of a guy who had been willing his way to incredible success his whole life, and then realized that to beat this thing, he was going to have to surrender. We talk about a lot. We talk about Philly hoops, too. When you hear him talk about Bo and Hank, that's Bo Kimball and Hank Gathers, two guys from the city of Philadelphia who ended up being two of the best players in the country. Most importantly, we talk about recovery from addiction and what he had to do and what he tells people today about what his journey has been like. So let's get to Doug Overton. But to get to Doug Overton, you got to go through Big Bro out in California, Kevin Souza.
Forty 33, LA by 7. 3.5 to go in the first half.
So smooth.
He goes down. Overton for three. Bingo. Got a ball back, baby.
Hey, Pete.
Hey, Doug Overton.
What's up, buddy?
How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
I'm good. You sound great. This is, by the way, I was thinking. You notice, I'm on time. I was never late for Inside the Armor. If you remember that show we used to do. Remember that?
Yes, absolutely, man. Always on time, buddy.
So for people that are listening, this is not our first sit down. We used to get. I was lucky enough when I worked in the D League, and you were working for the Nets, and you were the head coach of the Springfield Armor. I think it was every Monday we would sit down, and we would do Inside the Armor. You were very patient and tolerant with me then, so I appreciate you doing it again now.
That's why I could take your call now, buddy.
So where are you at today?
I'm back in Philly.
Okay.
Yep, been here for a few years. Right now, I'm running my training company. I train young kids basketball in the Philadelphia area. Doing really well with that, and also working with Timmy Brooks and the Synergy House recovery living facility for young men in this area. So, got my hands full, but enjoying life and happy where I'm at right now today. Been through a lot these last few years, but thankful to be here.
Yeah, I mean, you've been through a shitload, and you've been working your ass off. From what I've heard, and that's something you kind of always had. That's how you last, 11 years in the NBA with 8 different teams?
Yeah, 12 years. Yep, 12 years in the league. Coached another 10 years.
Yeah, you've given a lot to the game of basketball, and now you're kind of giving a lot to the game of life. I want to go back to just your childhood and growing up. So you went to Dobbins Tech in North Philadelphia. Did you grow up in North Philly?
Yeah, grew up in Philly, Germantown section of Philly. I have family all over. My mother's from Southwest Philly. My dad's from South Philly. Aunts live in North Philly. So, spend most of my time all over the place, especially when my parents separated. But mostly grew up in Germantown and West Oak Lane section. And my cousin ended up going to Dobbins, who was like a brother to me. He was 2 years older. And then of course, the right thing was to follow him down there and end up going to Dobbins, and the rest is history.
What was it like growing up in that area? Was basketball your life from as early as you can remember?
Oh yeah, man, basketball. I started out playing football, believe it or not, until they put me on the offensive line, gave me number 62.
That was the end of that.
I was like, hold up, man. I wanted to be Franco Harris or Lynn Swan or somebody. And they like, yeah, you tall, get on the offensive line. But, but it also was a great thing for me, like, because it just taught me a lot of discipline. I ended up playing with some great guys, with some great football players in the city. And that kind of gave me my first team building experience. But then I just started picking up the basketball. I realized that was the thing I wanted to do. And then so many great players growing up in Philly, man, just in the playgrounds and just, guys I was growing up with, mentoring me and playing under their, following their lead. Man, I got hooked up with John Harnett, and he started teaching us the game and playing down at Gustine Lake in East Falls. I started playing Sunny Hill when I was about 11, 12 in the development league, playing against kids from all over the city. I was like, wow, I could be pretty good at this. And by the time I got to Dobbins, I was playing varsity in the 9th grade. And I believe I was the first freshman in public school history to play varsity. I think that was the first year they allowed freshmen to play varsity. I think it was myself and Brian Shorter who played at Grad.
Brian Shorter, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, we both played freshmen, played varsity as freshmen. I think that was the first year they allowed freshmen to play.
Brian Shorter went to Pitt, right?
Yeah, he ended up going to Pitt.
Uh-huh.
And we came out the same time. So yeah, that was, that great Dobbins team with Hank and Bo and
you,
Darryl Gates and stuff. Yeah, we had a hell of a team, hell of a run.
You sure did. And growing up for you in that area, the one thing about you that I think a lot of men and women can relate to as far as addiction is concerned is you were a late bloomer in a sense that, you didn't really, from the outside looking in at least, alcohol or drugs, whatever you want to call it, didn't affect your life until like 6 years ago, right?
Yeah, correct. You hit the right on the money, man. I'm 52 years old. I'll be 53 in August. And I didn't really start. I picked up my first joint, 6 years ago.
So when you're in high school at Dobbins and you're in North Philly, you're not smoking weed.
No.
You're not getting sidetracked at all. Are you drinking at all?
No. Occasionally a beer here and there. I can say when I wasn't in college or high school, drink a 40 every now and then, but it was, not something that, that we really was involved in. I mean, Hank gathers and man, we played ball 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
And although it was around us a lot, that was just something like, hey, look, man, we focused, we locked in, this is what we do. And those guys that were involved in that, like, they knew, like, it was a different code back then. It was like, yo, leave those guys alone. They separate. They play ball, and we don't do this. And they kind of looked out for us to make sure we stayed on the right path as well. So, that was something that never really was my thing. And till somehow later in life, I decided to venture down that road.
When you were back in North Philly, was there stress around that, like those living conditions, or was that something where, hey, this is just my life, normal's kind of what you get used to, and
yeah,
you're playing you're playing hoops. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, man, it was definitely part of what was the deal. I mean, you got to remember in the early '80s, I came to high school was '83 in North Philly to '87, and then went to LaSalle from '87 to '90. That was in the middle of the crack epidemic, and a lot of friends, a lot of guys I was growing up with, even guys that played ball, started dealing drugs in that area. So you had the drug dealers, you had the crack explosion. You remember those drug wars back then with Junior Black Mafia and the Jamaicans, and like it was all over the place. Addiction was running really rampant with with that crack hitting urban America all over the place. So like yeah, we seen it live. We seen girls we went to school with getting hooked on that stuff, and parents, and I had family members going to jail. I had my best friend who I played ball with, got caught up in that life and ended up getting killed a few years later after I graduated from LaSalle, and I just lost so many people who got caught up in that fast life of drugs and money and all that. So it was tough, playing in the summer leagues and seeing like that going on while we was playing. It's like, yo, man, you got to stay locked in and try to make a way for my family, to get out. But yeah, it addiction was, now you don't think of it like that. It just becomes like just part of, I guess, how things were, and not thinking like, man, like we just dealt with it. A lot of people, we didn't know really how to handle it and how to process it back then. It was just part of life.
That's heavy duty, right? Because you're kind of in the middle of that, but you're playing your way out, and you're
right.
staying locked in, and it's like you're almost wise beyond your years, because you look at kids today, and you're working with some of them at Synergy House when they're just younger. We're just prone to make bad decisions, period. And it's almost like you didn't have room for error as a kid in order to accomplish what you wanted to accomplish.
Yeah, I mean, and like I could just say I was one of the ones that paid attention to those talks we got from guys, and seeing guys getting killed and guys growing up getting locked up. This has happened to guys like I went to high school with, close friends of mine, watching them die and young, and it was like, man, I've been in the car with some of these guys. I went out with some of these guys. Not like we weren't around it. It was just by the grace of God, like things didn't one bad turn or maybe I was fortunate because I had that outlet where I had a scholarship to play Division I basketball, had a chance to make a living doing this or whatever, or getting a college degree. Some guys is like, hey man, things ain't work out. I played high school basketball and didn't go to college, and hey, I got opportunity to go down this road, or maybe some of the guys even got hooked on this stuff, or drinking became a big thing. So like I said, man, I look back at it now and I see kids that get caught up with it. Like you said, kids that we dealing with all the stuff that you got going on today. It could have easily happened to me. It just me having the right people in my life and me paying attention and locking in, where I just made that decision not to go down that road.
That Division I scholarship, you go to LaSalle, but who else was recruiting you, and where else? I'm sure a lot of coaches and schools are recruiting you, but where else did you think about going?
Well, it came down. Yeah, I had a lot of schools, Rutgers, BC's. I took a visit to USC. Believe it or not, out of Southern Cal. Hank and Bo had just signed 2 years before they signed at Southern Cal, and the coach there was recruiting me, and then Stan Morrison got let go, and George Ravlin got hired. Remember that?
Oh yeah,
George
he was.
Ravlin,
Yeah,
a local guy. Yeah, George was a local guy.
Villanova.
And Villanova, Philly guy, Cheltenham, and he actually continued to recruit me because he tried to get Bo and Hank to stay. But they ended up transferring to Loyola Marymount to play for Paul Westhead, who was another LaSalle guy.
Yeah.
So, it was funny that both schools continued to recruit me because I was 2 years behind them. So I visited USC with George Ravlin and also Loyola Marymount, and I was like, "What the hell is Loyola Marymount?" Nobody heard of that, other than like Hank and Bo going in. They like, "Yo, Doug, you got to come here. Like Westhead got this system. We're going to be the number one scoring team in the country. You can come here and we can run all day, and we're going to average 100 and something." I'm like, come on, man. Nobody heard of Loyola. And I'm like, you kidding me? So, and I'm like, I'm not going that far. Like, I'd rather go to USC, but I'm like, I can't go to USC, and those guys right down the street, they're going to kill me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, how the heck you choose USC and we at Loyola? So, I ended up saying, well, I made the decision. I'm like, well, I'd rather go to LaSalle. Lionel Simmons just signed the year before. And we beat Lionel in the Public League Championship in '85. So I visited LaSalle. I said, hey, this is an opportunity for me to stay home. I said, if Lionel, All-American, he can choose to go to LaSalle. He was Player of the Year. I was '87 Player of the Year. I said, I can go to LaSalle too. I said, I'd much rather pass him the ball 20 times a game than got to pass it to Hank and Bo 40 times a game. So that was my logic. So I was like, I could play for Speedy Mars, Philly legend. And Lionel was like, man, we building something here. It was an opportunity for me to stay home and my family can continue to go watch the games.
I mean, and you did. It's funny.
Yeah.
You told me two things there, and both of them came true. Hank and Bo turned that program into, the most phenomenal offensive fireworks display we've probably ever seen in college basketball, playing for Paul Westhead, who people can identify with him maybe even a little more now with the Showtime Lakers show on HBO, Winning Time, where Westhead is featured in that show. And, because he coached the Lakers before he ended up coaching those guys. But you and Randy Woods and Lionel Simmons playing for Speedy Morris, you guys put LaSalle on the map. I mean, you really did. LaSalle had a rich tradition. But back, you put them back on the map in the 80s. You guys made 3 NCAA tournaments. I think you did at least. 3 straight. And it was what was happening with Philly and the Big Five was so cool. And what are some of your memories playing for LaSalle?
Oh man, it was awesome. You're talking about, I grew up going to the Palestra. Remember the streamers and the pretzels and hot dogs.
Oh yeah.
And John Hurnett used to take us to the games, and you sit there. It's almost like you're there all day. It's like you're watching like LaSalle play and Penn play, Villanova. Like it just seemed like it was just something to do. Like you're watching. My guy. I was a big Mo Martin fan at St. Joe's. Maurice Martin. Like I loved him. That's why I wore number. Everybody think I wore number 11 because of Isaiah Thomas, but I actually loved Mo Martin at St. Joe's. That was like my guy growing up, 6'6" point guard. And then like LaSalle with Steve Black and Ralph Lewis and all those guys, Temple, with Granger Hall and Stansberry. Like I grew up watching them, so like it was easy for me. Once we played at the Civic Center or half our games at the Palestra.
Okay.
And it was great, with Temple and they had Mark Macon and Howard Evans.
Oh yeah.
They were like number 1 team in the country, and then next year my sophomore year we started getting ranked and winning, like you said, winning our conference and being Big Five, competing for Big Five championships. So, it was just great, man. It was just like you said, it was just a great time for basketball in this area. Just competitive. Those games are like super rivalries. Where everybody got involved, and most of the talent stayed home back in those days. So, Temple was a bunch of Philly, guys that we seen over the summer. Yeah. So it was like we was bragging rights all the time, like we playing in the Sunny Hill College League, or we going from one campus to the next, playing pickup games, or maybe we playing down at Gustine Lake. And you had the Pooh Richardsons from UCLA, and those guys, Hank and Bo, coming home from the summer. So it was like, yo, man, you had to bring your A game every day, man. Snoop Grams, we had guys from all over, that come home and like, you just had to bring your game. You had to work on your game, and it was just big time back then.
You mentioned John Hurnett. Who was he for people that don't know?
Oh man, John was the greatest teacher I've ever met of basketball. He learned under John Chaney and Sonny.
Sonny Hill.
John is responsible of, helping some, just like Claude Gross and T. Shields in South Philly, who helped, Lionels and Nate Blackwells and Clarence Thomas. Everybody know, Claude Gross, who was married to Will Chamberlain's sister, big Philly legend.
Mm-hmm.
John was the guy uptown in Germantown, and Aaron McKee, myself, Pooh Richardson, Snoop Graham, So many guys, he got us at a young age and taught us how to play, he taught us what IQ in basketball. And, that word get shuffled around, get lost a little bit. Now it's about talent and skill and, athleticism, but like we really learned how to play.
Yeah.
And playing with IQ and being able to read and react and understand the game, and learn those fundamentals. I think that's what, that Philly brand of basketball.
I was talking to
Philly brand ball. That's how we learned that.
I was talking to a college coach over the weekend, a baseball coach, and he was saying that the skills and the athleticism, they're there, but he said that the intensity and the IQ that the guys had coming up before them is just not there anymore. And the competitive streak isn't there. And he said, so what we're doing is we're actually stripping down some of the tactical stuff, and getting them back up to speed how we want them. And we've got to totally teach them the nasty streak pretty much, or try to get it out of them. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the reasons why, I'm doing this development thing right now, is just trying to get that back, get that brand of basketball back, teaching, how to play on the floor, how to think, how to read, how to play, that brand of basketball. You look at the European, and you see why they're being so successful, because they run those development where they get those kids at a young age and they teaching them how to play the game and they're getting that IQ. And, you got your Donkages and your Jokic's and those guys that, they know how to play basketball, because they've been doing it since a young age. It's not just bouncing around, playing dad ball. Your dad coached the AAU team and, and you travel, and then if you're not getting playing time on this, you go to this team, or then you go to that team, or you get more sneakers on this team, or whatever it is. It's like it's so watered down. If you want to play basketball, you just get a team, and you got 50 million teams, and you just playing games and going and traveling, playing in tournaments, and you'll get one out of whatever 100 kids, to end up being okay because he's 6'6" and he's athletic, but who's really learning the game? You're not really competing against the best guys in the gym, learning every day how to play, what spacing is all about, how to react, how to find a gap in the defense, how to drive and kick, how to jump, stop, and pivot and pass, how to go both ways, drive left, drive right, that kind of stuff. And that, like you said, that's been lost right now, but that's what we learned, playing in the gym with Pooh Richardson and, Dennis Whitaker and some of the tough players, you had to earn that, that right to get on the court. You had to get beat up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And fight and scratch and learn how to play defense and all those things, and compete. And I think that's what, we got to get that brand of basketball back.
When you were at LaSalle, what did you learn about yourself? Because you guys had success on the court. We talked about that. What did you learn about yourself as a man? How did you develop? Again, because you continue to avoid, and now, drugs are in college, like the culture, cocaine is like a popular, people think it's like, oh, people can do cocaine. And you're kind of around that. How do you navigate those waters as a young man?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, it, like you said, just seeing it, seeing so many talented guys. I mean, there's so many, and grew up around, so many guys that could have made it to the NBA.
Yeah.
That I watch play. Guys that can just flat out just go, and you see them get caught up.
And guys who made it to the NBA, right? And they just like
guys,
William Bedford, like those guys, like guys that just kind of fell right off because of cocaine abuse right away.
Right. I mean, we got Philly guys. I mean, we used to go watch, Louis Lloyd down in the Baker League. Mm-hmm. And, you had those guys and Billy Ray Bates and guys, Joe Brown, guys, so many guys we watch. Like, man, you find out that those guys had some addiction problems. And you remember the NBA in the 70s and 80s was a big drug thing back then with guys. And I used to see some of the Sixers in my neighborhood. Like, yo, what is he doing? I know that guy. Like, he live on my block. He's a drug dealer. Like, what is Daryl talk? Like, you know, what's some of these guys doing around my neighborhood? You know, you used to see like some of those guys. I don't want to tell on everybody.
Yeah,
but,
no, I got you.
You know, but it was, you know, you see it, and then you know, and then like you said, you know, you remember the Len Bias story came out, you know, in the 80s. You know, then it's like, wow, when that happened to Len Bias, it's like that kind of scared everybody straight. You know, so it was so much of that stuff going on during that time that like kind of like, yo, man, that's a whole nother league. We're gonna learn from those guys. That's what like our era, you know, kind of like, you know, the Poos, you know, that's when Pooh got drafted to the league, and then, you know, Bo got drafted. Hank would have been drafted, rest in peace, if he hadn't passed
How
away.
did that affect you, the Hank Gathers situation? I mean, that was a historic deal. The guy, it's about Hank Gathers, but I have cardiomyopathy too. He had the hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. He literally, in their conference tournament, I mean, the team's on top of the world, he dunks a basketball and collapses and loses his life. And you're one of his best friends. You're playing in the conference tournament across the country. How did I can't imagine that didn't have a huge impact on you, Doug, as a young man.
Man. Yeah, it's to this day. I mean, and to be honest with you, let's fast forward to, you know, my most recent experiences in addiction. Like, I'm realizing that a lot of those things I never had a chance to grieve. So I'm getting therapy on things that, you know, a lot of stuff that was coming to the surface that I just never really had a chance to grieve and process. And Hank obviously was one of them. And my best friend Randy Slade was another one who was shot 17 times and some drug related stuff that he played on the high school. We were best friends since kindergarten. So it was like, and then John passing, like it was so much, you know, death that was happening over my, you know, 40
John,
years.
your basketball mentor.
Yeah, John passed away the weekend that my son, who just turned, I think Miles might have turned 12 or 11. I was just handing Miles over to John, so John could start mentoring him. And John worked him out at St. Joe's Friday night, and that was the last time we saw John. So literally, John worked out my son, but that was the last workout John had. We found him Monday morning at his apartment.
Wow.
So like that was like devastated me, because here I was great. I was passing the torch down to my son, like, hey, yo, John, you got it. You know, teach him. And he was just excited about Miles. Like, wow, talking about full circle. Now I'm working with Doug's son. And then he passed away. So that, you know, so it was just so much.
Are you finding now in the work that you're doing on yourself and the work that you're helping others do on themselves, like a lot of that shit we're just stuffing away? Because we're not supposed to grieve because maybe you're a young, tough man and at the time you're in the NBA and you got to get on with it. Let's go on with the show. For a guy like you too, you're fighting to stay in the league, you know, a lot of the time.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, when my best friend, you know, Hank, like you said, we playing in a conference tournament against Siena, and I'm like looking over at the stands. We up probably double digits. Game's almost over, and I'm like, you know, Speedy trying to take me out the game, and my mom looking over my mom. I'm seeing people crying in the stands. I'm like, what's going on? And you seeing people like, you know, the word is getting around in the arena, and then Speedy call a timeout, take us out the game. I'm like, yo, he never takes us out. Like normally, like a minute to go or 2 minutes. It's like 4 minutes to go, and he's like, yo. And I like look back at my mom, and she's, you know, just bawling, crying, and I run off the court into the locker room. You know.
So Speedy told you on the bench?
Yeah, well,
Okay.
I mean, because at that point I'm looking at my mom crying, and everybody in the stands is like, you know, full of tears. I'm like, yo, what's going on? And then they like, yo, Hank passed away. I'm like, oh my God. Yeah. So Lionel, we all did, you know. I just remember going off the court. You know, thank God we had the game won. And, you know, we had to decide, you know, we was up all night in the hotel deciding if we, you know, Speedy was like, look, I understand if y'all don't want to play in the championship game, you know, that's fine. And, you know, we just wrestled with it all night and then end up saying, like, what would Hank want us to do? And, you know, some reason we came up with the strength to play and win the tournament.
We'll get back to this conversation in a second, but right now, a word from our sponsors. RogueCon 23. That's right, it is here. It's not back, it's here. It's the first one. Join the ultimate celebration of digital content with its creators, passionate fans, and industry experts. It is all happening in downtown Waco across multiple venues, January 20th through the 22nd of 2023. Now, if you want to go, you got to get tickets, and tickets are on sale at RogueCon23.com. That's RogueCon, RogueCon 23.com. Be there. I'm going to be there. Everybody's going to be there. Let's go.
Yeah, man. It you know, like you said, it just things, and then like like from there, now you trying to make it, and then like I said, I'm losing friends, losing key people, and like you said, we didn't know about therapy, we didn't know about talking. I'm dealing with it, growing up in abusive home, right, with my mom and dad separating, and a lot of things going on there, and having to grow up so fast, and then playing, like you said, being a journeyman and trying to grind this thing out as long as I can, and dealing with injuries and 10-day contracts, and trying to make a living out of that, going to Australia, going to Barcelona, playing in the CBA, which is now the G League, trying to just stay alive to make the most out of this.
Did you feel any pressure?
Like you said, you really don't realize what you really not dealing with.
Yeah.
And where you starting to put different things and placing different things in your subconscious, and how things come out later.
What was the situation like at home growing up?
Yeah, it was tough. I mean, it was me and my sister. She's 3 years older than me, and yeah, we bounced around. Like, my parents, split. It was always physically, with my mom and dad fighting, and neighbors always outside, and it was just a big deal. And they ended up leaving. My mom ended up leaving. I think I was like 10. My sister might have been like 13. And we went to my grandmom's house out in Southwest Philly, and I stayed there. And then we stayed at my aunt's house, and we bounced around, all the way through high school. And then she finally got her own place my senior year, going into LaSalle. She got her own apartment, and by then I was getting ready to go to college. So yeah, it was, but back then, I had basketball, and that's the fortunate thing that I had. I just buried everything in that, and long as she was safe, and wherever we lived at, we made the most of it. We was with family, but you just living, like, you see it a lot, obviously growing up, and it kind of like becomes normalized, and you deal with it, and you see how things are, and but I had a lot of resentments that I learned later in life that I was holding on to, obviously with growing up.
What came of Dad?
My dad is still around. He's 80 years old. He worked for the gas company for 30 years. He's remarried and been married for 20-something years. My stepmom is a retired police officer. She just retired. And right now he's dealing with a lot of health issues. He has dementia, stage 2 dementia right now. But I learned, like I said, I've done a lot of work. And a lot of the work I've just done in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Talking about things and being open about it in group sessions and therapy, and not realizing like that those things carry, and they can you can hold on to those things, and you can bury those things, and they can resurface later. But I forgave my dad in my own way, and a part of it was wanting to be a great father and a great husband. And then raising my kids, and I was married, 27 years, and, put my kids through, great schools, and wanted to give them a great house with a pool, and, and all that, like what I didn't have. And I think that was a lot to how I was growing up. And like, you know what, I'm going to give them the best environment that I didn't have. So I had two kids, just like it was me and my sister. It was my son, who's 3 years older than my daughter, and they went to Waldron Academy, and, my son went to the prep, and my daughter went to Shipley, and he went to Wake Forest, and she went to Yale. It's like, you know what? That was part of like, me and my wife, she grew up in a single family home in Camden, New Jersey, with 7 brothers and 5 brothers and a sister, and a lot of, 3 of her brothers incarcerated, and 1 overdosed over heroin. And so she'd been through a lot, and we both kind of like was going through this thing, like, we've been through a lot, but we never talked about it. It just was like, we just wanted to have the best life for our kids, but neither one of us really dealt with her past or mine.
Yeah.
So we understand those things now. Like I said, man, if I'd have known about getting therapy, 15 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, being able to talk about my childhood, and how I was raised and stuff like that, and then realizing that, what addiction can mean. Like, could I get addicted to smoking pot and drinking and all that? It's like, no way I would ever thought that. And then here at 45 years old, 46 years old, I'm getting hooked up with, some people and doing things that I never thought that would have happened. So, yeah, and you learn.
It's kind of like, how would you think they could happen? Because you're 46 years old. I mean, really, because a lot of people, when it had kind of surfaced that you were having problems, my first thing was like, that's not the guy I know. Like, flat out. Like, not that anybody was coming to me for comment, but I was like, that I can tell you. And other people who are way more notable than myself said the same thing. Like, this is not the guy. You'd earned an impeccable reputation over the course of 46 years or however long. And the one thing I want to ask you, part of your reputation, man, everybody knew you worked hard, you were competitive, you were compassionate, you always had a big smile on your face. Was there any pressure to keep that up? Because everybody counts on you to come into the room and sort of light it up and be super positive. Was there any pressure there?
Yeah, but I didn't know that. But yeah, I think that part of it was that build up, where it's like, I've been that guy, like you said, for so long. I mean, I'm going all the way back to 11 years old, telling my mom, like, yo, you got to get out of here. It's time. Like, growing up, wanting to beat my dad up, for hitting my mom, or telling her, like, you know what, enough is enough. You're trying to make this work, and we just got to get out of here. And like making those grown decisions at a young age. You don't realize that, being able to, see your best friend get killed, and growing up and making decisions like that I had to do, being a big brother for, my sister, who, had to see a lot, even though she was older than me. And then growing up in the environment, saying no to drugs and making those decisions. And like you said, I was the first player, when I made it to the NBA, I came back and ran a camp in my old neighborhood where I grew up, and I did it every year for 20-something years, free of charge. And like, but it was everything. Like, I always wanted to help and be mentor, taking care of my family and helping my wife's, family and, her brothers and their problems. And I remember going up to Lebanon, taking her brothers rehabs, up there all the time, giving them clothes and helping them out and their problems. And like you said, I never knew about taking care of myself.
Yeah.
I didn't know what self-care was about. And I think, like, once my daughter graduated from Shipley and, we decided to move back, like, okay, enough with the pool and the house, and like, let's move back and downsize, like normal people do. We move back to,
so you downsized and moved back to like a nice area of Philly?
Yeah, we moved right back to St. Joe's, right in Overbrook, on the same block as Michael Nutter's on, we in that area, Winfield. We got, my wife's a real estate, so we got a nice house.
Nice house, Michael Nutter, the old mayor of Philly. Yes, people don't know. Yeah,
mayor, right in Winfield, right down the street from St. Joe's. And then, my wife had a little beach property in Lewis, Delaware, and so like we going back and forth from there and living pretty good. And then
and you're coaching and
I'm coaching.
Yeah, we touched on the fact that you were with the Sixers first, then you were at St. Joe's, right? Stop me if I'm wrong. And then you're working for the Nets, head coach of the D League team, and then you get a job coaching at Lincoln University.
Correct. Yeah, I came home for a year. I started doing TV because I wanted to see my
you did
daughter's
Comcast.
senior year at Ship. Right.
Yeah.
And it started out with when I left Brooklyn, I came home. I did the Comcast because I wanted to watch her for her senior year. And obviously that's when the Springfield team left to go to Grand Rapids.
Yeah.
And I decided I wasn't going to go to Grand Rapids at that time.
Yeah.
We all made that decision.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what, this is a perfect time for me to like watch my daughter play her senior year, and you
were good on, you were working with the Sixers, covering the Sixers and things on the outside. They look like they're going great, man. Especially it's weird because now back in Philly, I'm sure you're back inside on TV. You're back inside the homes of the people that know you and grew up with you. Yeah, so people are probably excited about that.
I'm so excited and dropping my daughter, going to her soccer games, going to her basketball games at Shipley, and being involved and being around, like you said, doing TV, still staying involved in the game, still mentoring, helping the guys out, coming out of college and pros and workouts, and Jameer and Kyle and all the guys that so many Philly guys, still helping out with that. And then I hooked up with a couple guys that I went to high school with, and played ball with, and I was like, you know what, I could smoke a little bit of weed and hang out. I'm back in Philly. My wife was like, I knew like that wasn't good for when we came back to Philly because you started hanging out, hanging out with these guys, and I was like, you know what, I could smoke a little bit on the weekends, whatever.
Had you never smoked before?
It was almost like a reward thing. Like I felt like I earned it.
And you never smoked before?
Everybody around me. I never smoked before at all. I had no idea how to roll up a joint or blunt, whatever it is. And I think that's what happens because now, obviously, after going to treatment and realizing like I had 2 psychoses and that the weed I was smoking wasn't weed, it was weed laced with PCP, that I was getting hooked. And that's when I realized that, wife was like, yo, you acting kind of strange and stuff going on and boom, boom, boom. And I'm not really realizing, I'm just smoking weed. And I'm still functioning, going to work. At this time, I'm at Lincoln or whatever. And I'm not realizing that I'm smoking some stuff that's got me addicted. And it's more than that. And then looking back, like I never rolled up any weed. Every time I went and got my weed from my guy, quote unquote, a friend who I thought somebody that I knew from back in the 80s, he always rolled them up for me.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like almost like going to pick up a pack of cigarettes. They were already pre-rolled. So I had no idea. Now that I look at it, I'm just trusting somebody to give me whatever. Not even knowing, like, I couldn't tell what weed was, what was good, what was bad, what was mixed, what was in it.
Which kind of speaks to like the mentality that when you start to enter into this whole realm, right? It's like you don't know what you're getting. You kind of trust who you're getting it from, but is it really? It's all these problems now that come into Doug's life that would have never happened before if he didn't pick up that first joint.
Exactly. And then that's when the resentment start coming, and I'm realizing that, like, what's the bigger issue? Like, what am I escaping from? And like, what's, and then I think that's when it all started. Like, well, you shouldn't be doing this. And then like the more people told me, I'm like, yo, you know what? I earned this, and that's when I started, like you said, it's like, yo, I never took care of my, like, this was part of like, you know what? I'm retired now. I done put kids through school. I done took care of everybody. I done mentored everybody. I done did this, and like, instead of like going pick up some golf clubs, I picked up some weed.
Yeah.
Like this is what I want to do. I want to hang out and I want to smoke like everybody else is doing. This is the cool thing.
I mean, it's cliche, Doug, but it's like no more Mr. Nice Guy. You know,
Yeah,
I've been doing
exactly.
stuff for everybody else my whole life.
That's what you said it, and that's what you know. And it's amazing how your mind tricks you like that and thinks like, yo, you know what, like, dude, you earned this. You know, your mind really starts telling you things like that. It's like, yo, and the more somebody told me, like, yo, dude, why are you doing that? And, you know, the more you resent, and like, nah, I'm doing this because I want to do it. F you, I want to do this. So that's when that started to become a problem.
People in your life were like, "Hey, this is getting out of control."
Well, a lot of people didn't know because at the time I was still working.
Yeah.
I was head coach at Lincoln, and I'm driving out to Chester County every day. I'm still doing some stuff with the Sixers on the weekend. It was not until I had the incident in not far from my house, and
But you got arrested for indecent exposure because it's out there.
Yeah,
We'll just say it.
Yeah. And again, the denial part, what I didn't realize, I was having a psychosis then.
Yeah.
Because I was hot and not knowing, you know, getting to the bottom of it.
So it's almost like a blackout, right, Doug? Like you're on the trail.
Blackout.
Yeah, you're on the trail. People said
trail.
you were showing, you know, your wiener off, and
and
you're kind of just blacked out.
Yep, kind of blacked out. I remember going to the bathroom. I'm going to the bathroom, but I just remember being real hot, obviously, and then like I said, not knowing what those symptoms and what that drug does. I'm thinking I was just smoking weed, so I was like, no way.
Would you like smoke a joint and then I'm gonna go walk the dog, pretty much?
Yeah, and then I'm smoking, you know, this laced up shit, and you know, I'm out, and like I said, I had a blackout and really didn't remember what the hell happened.
Yeah,
and so.
And this happened again, like, and it's
it happened again in 2020,
which lends to the addiction side of it, right? It's like you would think anybody, because I can relate. I mean, you know, I got into some big trouble myself, right? And it took me a lot to get to reach my bottom, but I continue to bang my head against the wall and be like, I can do it again, or that didn't matter, or even convince myself like they were wrong. You know, I wasn't doing anything wrong, and like your mind tells you, whatever you can do to bargain getting high again, then, you know, whatever your drug of choice is, yours in this case is weed, which you didn't know was lace. Like, it's just like, you know, you end up doing the same shit again and getting in trouble the same way again.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and what I was, you know, obviously when you get in trouble, and you know, I had, you know, court stuff and probation and drug testing and all that, and you know, so I didn't smoke anything for a year, but that kind of hurt me because it made me think like, well, one, they got it all wrong because I didn't. Like I said, I had no idea that I was in a psychosis because I had a blackout. I was like, yo, dude, they tripping. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And I ain't you know, could remember it, and then when I stopped for that year, you know, you don't think you got a problem because you're like, okay, I stopped.
Yeah.
So the next thing you know is like you started picking up again. I was like, you know what? It's just weed. I can smoke a little bit, and then I get right back to the same thing, not realizing that whole thing was still an addiction, and that I was going to get right back involved in that. And then that's when my wife's like, yo, dude, like I know people that smoke weed, whatever. Like, it's more than that. You smoke it. And I was like, nah, get out of here. It's just, you know, whatever. And then, like, that's when the weed started taking over. And, like, that's when everything became around that. And then that's when 2020 came. And here I'm living in East Falls. I got my own place. And, you know, it's me and my weed. And
So did you and your wife get separated?
Yeah, we got separated at the time. And then, you know, I'm, like, isolated and smoking, and then that's when the pandemic hit, and I'm just like quarantined. I'm like, yo, just make sure I'm getting my weed and just in the house. And my mother, my mother got a place in the same place, but I was in a different part of it. I was in a loft, and she was at an apartment. And then that's when I had another psychosis, and I'm like outside in my underwear in the courtyard, and I'm like spazzed out, and people recognized who I was, and police, thank God, they recognized who I was. They tased me. Yeah, they could have easily shot me.
Yeah.
I think like a couple of days before that, the guy in West Philly who was high off of something, police actually shot.
Jeez.
But thank God they knew who I was, and they tased me. And again, I don't remember it. I don't remember what happened. You know, they tell me, yo, you was outside and, you know, again, like no clothes on, you know, bugging out in the apartment complex in the courtyard, throwing people furniture. And that's when they had in the paper that I was armed robbery or whatever.
Yeah.
But I actually was having a psychosis, and I took somebody's lawn patio furniture off the balcony and like threw it in the yard or some shit. And that's when they was like, yo, was he trying to break? That's when they thought like, was he trying to break in somebody? That's how the paper put it all in that. Same as the indecent exposure, like, oh, he exposed. They didn't know I was having a psychosis.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So.
Well, again, I mean, in their defense, there's zero drug history with you. I guess the second time there was.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Yeah.
That's what, you know, and people are like, yo, what's going on with him? Like, yo, what, you know, what's the deal? And again, with me, it was like, because I thought I was smoking weed, I didn't have a problem, and then not realizing how heavily addicted I was at this point on this serious freaking thing. It didn't happen until the second time, you know, and I found myself in Bryn Mawr Hospital at the psych ward for 4 days, you know, getting through the psychosis. Is when I realized, oh shit, man, like, this is not normal. Like, this is not what normal. Even people that smoke weed, like, this is something different. And then that's when I started getting the therapy. I went to Karen for 30 days, and then I went to Karen Renaissance down in Boca Raton, and really started doing the work.
So you're at Bryn Mawr. You're at Bryn Mawr, and you're like, I need to, and you kind of surrender. You're like, I need to go to treatment.
Yeah. Well, you know, the first couple of days at Bryn Mawr, like, kind of fuzzy to me. Obviously, I think I was still out of it. You know, in that psychotic mind frame. And then by the third day, I was like, oh shit, like, okay, all right, I need to get help. You know, what's going on? And, you know, and that's when people realize, I think, you know, like, yo, Doug, we got to get him help. Now we understand what's going on.
Yeah.
When we know that's not him, we know that, okay, he has a drug problem. And that's when the help started. That's when it started. It's like, okay, now I realized everything my wife, my ex-wife, whatever everybody was saying was, you know, okay, now it's all coming together where I was at.
Did you feel like a release almost when you kind of were like, okay, I'm going, like, gosh, like, man.
Yeah, I did. And I was like, that was the most surrenderous part. Like, and my son came in from Miami, and he picked me up from Bryn Mawr and was taking me straight to Karen. And that drive, I just felt like the biggest release in all my life was that ride from Bryn Mawr Hospital to Karen. I actually felt like this is the first time that I can let go and take care of myself. I finally felt like, wow, like this is the big, like, you did it. Like, now you can take care of yourself. Now you really hit the bottom, and now we can. And honestly, it's like, obviously I'm still, you know, got drugs in me, and I know, like, I'm still kind of in that state. But yeah, I had that feeling like, yo, you know what? You can't fight this no more. Like, now it's time to, like, get the help you need and surrender.
What started to happen to you when you got to treatment?
Oh man, I mean, I went through everything with normal, you know, guys go through. You know, one, I was in denial, and two, like, yo, you know, I belong? I'm not an alcoholic. I never did. You know, I'm new to, you know, this is, and then it was like, you know what? No, 40. You know, you're here because you got a problem, and you need to figure out why. And then that's when the work started happening, when I bought into, like, yo, you got to get to the bottom of, you know, because you don't want this to have this the second time. And now, yeah, you got a problem. You affected your family, you know, you embarrassed, your name, and obviously it's like, like I said, like, yo, what's going on? And that's when I realized, I was in the right place, and this is when the healing and the beginning stages of putting things back together. And it felt relief, like, okay, now I finally realized. And then that's what I learned in therapy and group is like, you don't know what you don't know. And addicts don't know that addiction is addiction, that it's a sickness, it's a disease. And you can't beat yourself up over that because, some people can drink and not have an addiction problem. Some people can smoke weed and not be, but others that can happen to. Or you can get addicted, whatever. You can start taking pain pills because you was in a car accident and end up getting hooked on heroin. And then you start realizing, like, you know what, I'm not the enemy. I'm going through something that happened to me in life, and that I have a disease, and this was an addiction. And then I started processing those incidents that happened and things that was going on, and realizing, like, yo, you know what, that's not you. That's not that Doug from that for 30-something years was great. Like, you can get back to being that guy again.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
You're
feeling.
not somebody that just exposing yourself, or you were under so it actually like made me feel like, okay, thank God I'm not just what people think is going on. Like, yo, what's up with this dude? And it's like, you know what? Okay, now I understand that. There was a big thing. Like, wow, okay, I get it. Like, okay, now start finding out, what does the symptoms of PCP or weed laced with this, and then I've got guys that's being admitted. Like, I had one kid who went to Bucknell. This kid was a lacrosse player. Bucknell was on a highway with no clothes on, and he had the same thing. And he was in there. His parents admitted one of his parents was on the board at Cairn. And then I'm in meeting. He's like, yo, dude, like, yeah, I was with the same thing. I was smoking weed that was laced, and like, yeah, your body gets this way and this, and then you had your clue, and I'm like, I remember when Martin Lawrence had that incident when he was running down the street. And then I started doing research and realized, okay, all right, good. Now I'm learning what was happening, and realized, okay, that's not you. That's not who you are. That is what you were at that time under that substance. And then that's when the healing started.
It's such a relief.
It was about shame and guilt, obviously, and then being a public figure and having to read about stuff and some stuff that's not true, and people saying that this, and this, and then me not knowing that it was addiction. And then once I realized that, and like you said, like step one, once I realized I was unmanageable and that I had a problem, that's when I started to open up to getting help.
Isn't that the best? It's, dude, I mean, with the magnitude of the type of person you are, NBA player, NBA coach, and everybody around Philly knows who Doug Overton is. There had to be shame connected, right, to these incidents. And on the other side of that, there's no better place to go than a place like Cairn or rehab, where you can really, you're almost in a bubble, and you can process it. And when you come out, like talking to you right now, it's very obvious. Like you're pretty light, like we talk about wearing life like a loose shirt. You talk about this stuff with a great understanding and a great humility. And you could tell there's been a lot of processing done on your end. At least it feels like that. How did you work through that stuff, like in treatment and on the other side?
Yeah, I mean, it took a lot of work. Obviously, doing extensive, intensive treatment and going down to Cairn and spending another 4 or 5 months in intensive therapy.
How important is that, Doug? That extra 4 or 5 months?
Oh man, and I tell guys that, like, you think 30 days is enough. I always tell them, man, keep going, do more, like get to the root of it. It's because then it becomes not just about the drug or the alcohol or the addiction. It becomes to the depression, anxiety, what led to it, like what are some of the stresses, what are some of the things that you had to deal with. And to me, it was dealing with a lot of those things that we talked about in the beginning. My childhood, my growing up in a broken home, my grief and loss. I had all these things that I was able to spend time in, and I'm wondering, like, all right, when I'm in Cairn, why am I going to a grief and loss session? Like, why am I in this grief? Like, why am I going to childhood, talking about childhood trauma and stuff like that? And then once I got into it and I realized, wow, a lot of this stuff, resentments and shames and guilt and all these things that you hold in is what leads you to, picking up, what leads you to, those things, mental health. And now you see it, like you see these terms and you see these things all over the time. And then, but the best part about it was my kids actually going through this process with me and realizing that, part of what I was going through, my son was going through some stuff. My daughter, even though she very, very high achieving at obviously going to Yale and doing big things, she dealt with a lot of anxiety because she put so much pressure on herself to perform. And then my son, like being a basketball player and wanting to follow in my footsteps and things didn't work out for him. He was dealing with depression. And I didn't realize that those things was affecting me because we never talked about it.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I was bearing a lot of those resentments because of my kids. And I didn't feel like I was doing enough to help them. So until I fell and then the bottom fell out of me and my kids were there for me to support me, because they were saying the whole time, Dad, we knew this wasn't you. We knew that it was something that you were going through. We knew that wasn't the dad that raised us, because you were a great dad. You're a great guy, great person. We knew it was something that was the drug and addiction. You just didn't realize that. And that's when I realized, wow, they were right. And then we started doing this family processing and work, and they were like really involved with this treatment with me and doing these sessions. And then my son ended up saying, like a few months ago, like, yo, Dad, if you had not gone through what you went through, my son and my daughter both said it to me, we wouldn't be better off where we at right now.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. And that's when I realized, you know what? That's when you go through what you go through. And I'm sure you say the same. It makes you a better person if you come out the other side of it. And it can heal. It can break a generational curse.
Yes. It snaps off that branch of the family tree.
Yeah. It would break, like, from what my dad, and then I realized what he went through being, 14 siblings and how he was raised, and that affected him, in his marriage. Like, nobody taught him because he grew up a certain way. And then, you break that. And now my son is having conversations like, yo, I understand about getting therapy. I understand about talking about your film. I understand about all these things. And I'm like, wow, that's great, because he'll be able to, one day when he have kids, understand what we went through. And so it's like, it's been a blessing in disguise now, because, I'm so open now to talk about my feelings. I still have a therapist. I can still talk about, things and tell people the importance of not holding stuff in and sharing and making sure you take care of yourself first. I would not have known that if all that would not have happened.
Well, and it's weird because you probably wouldn't be talking to the kids you're talking to or the young men you're talking to over at Synergy Houses, and you wouldn't be talking to me on this platform where you have the ability to help other people. Like, it's weird, man. I mean, you play it the right way. You being anybody that struggles with addiction, and you kind of get on the right side of this thing, and you can help a shitload of people.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I intended to do. And that's what I said, when I got out. It's like, you know what? I've done everything. I played at the highest level. I coached at the highest level. I've been a head coach. I've done everything. Like, I want to give back at this game of life in recovery and dedicate and help the people the John Harnett's in recovery that helped me through this, and the people at Karen and the people along the way. And then you realize, like, everybody dealing with some kind of shit, whether you're in addiction or not. It's like, what? And then I'm looking at, like, now people realize, like, yo, they understanding what I went through. And, like, now it's like not that stigma of what people read about. And then they understand, like, oh man, I've been through that. Like, I have people tell me, yo, man, I had a psychosis too. Like, I had an edible, or I had a brownie, or somebody gave me some weed and I flipped out too, but I was at home, or I flipped out, and you got to remember, my shit happened. I'm in the newspaper. It could have happened a million times, and nobody will read about what somebody went through.
Yeah.
So now I got people like, yo, no, dude, that I understand that. Like, we get it. And then you realize, okay, you're not that person that there. It's like, man, most people can relate because they dealing with some form of something, depression, anxiety. A lot of people. My mom always tell me, if somebody's pointing their finger at you, they got 3 fingers pointing back at them. So, you know what? Like, own up what you been through, and that's what I learned at Karen. That's what I learned in going to meetings and AA and all that. It's like, you know what? The minute you accept it, the minute you take ownership of it, and well, first of all, if you don't, you deem to repeat it again because you're in denial and it can happen. But secondly, is like that's when you begin the healing process. And now I get to live a great life without any alcohol, any drugs. I got coping skills. I got a great relationship with my ex-wife, best friends. My kids. And I'm helping people, and I'm helping young people that can potentially go through what I went through or going through what I went through. So,
what do you tell some of those young kids? I mean, and we'll wrap up here in a minute, but what do you tell some of those young kids? I
think it reminds me of being in the locker room. I tell them it's no different. It's just we just talking about winning at life opposed to winning a basketball game. It's amazing how they glued to me, their eyes, their ears. One, because they see me hear somebody that went through, had everything, went through, obviously playing in the NBA, playing against Michael Jordan, LeBron, and Kobe, and all these guys. Boom, here something this as human and as real as possible can happen to him. And I tell them, like, yo, it can happen to anybody. Like, this doesn't define who you are. Getting to the bottom of it, putting the work in, learning this can define what you can be. You got a lot. I was 50 years old making this, going down this road. You guys are 18, you 24, 25. Like, you can fix this and do some awesome things for the rest of your life. I was able to do a lot of great things early in my life. And then, I had my experience later in life. So I'm kind of fortunate that, do you want it to happen at any point in your life? No, but, I can say that, I did a lot of things. So for me, my end of the road is nearer than most people. So I can look back and say, you know what, whatever time I got left here, at 52 to whatever, hopefully, I can dedicate it to this and making a difference. And they love it. Like, these guys, like, man, I tell them, like, yo, make sure you talk to your therapist. How much your therapist make an hour?
Get that money's worth.
$150 an hour. Yeah. Like, yo, make them work for that. Don't just sit in the room and they getting paid all this money and you don't want to talk because and I'm telling them, like, I had to realize, like, yo, make them earn that dollar that they make it, that $150 or $200 an hour. Give them everything that's possibly on your mind, on your plate. Talk about all that stuff. It's going to help you. And they laugh, but then they realize, like, yo, you're right. I said, go to that meeting, go to that AA meeting, go to that MA meeting, whatever it is. I said, talk in this group. I said, put your work in. I said, you got to put the work in if you want this to. I said, you can live a great life. And it's fulfilling. It helps me too. It helps me process this too. I mean, do I still have days? Is there people out there that still may look at me when, yeah. But that's okay, because now I realize it now, and I wouldn't change it. Like, I can't change it, first of all. Secondly, I'm even better than I was before.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And there's only one way out of any of this, like any of that, like those thoughts of, whether they reappear, the thoughts of shame, or just on every day being aggravated. For me, recovery is the only way out. So it doesn't matter. I mean, it's just like there's no solution to that shit that doesn't start and end with recovery in one way or another for me. So it's like, and like you said, I have a body of work in sobriety that shows that I'm a better person and things work out for me if I stay the course. And I got a body of work that shows what happens if I don't. It's pretty simple. And I've used that before too, Coach. The locker room thing, because it's like a locker room, man. And we got a playbook to winning, and it's like if we stick to this, there's evidence there that things will happen for us and things will fall the right way. But you got to do the work. Like you said, you got to show up and make that therapist earn their money.
That's right. You're right. And man, every time I go to Synergy and I walk through that door, I feel like I'm part of a team, with Timmy and Eric and those guys.
Yeah,
there.
Eric B. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Eric B. I mean, you go way back with those guys and Timmy and it's like, it's a team, man, and it's like, you feel that same. And that's when I told those guys, now it's up to you. You got to put that work in. You got to put your own reps in, right?
Yeah.
You got to get your shots up. You got to get in the gym and you got to run your 4 miles a day. You got to put your work out. What does that mean? It means getting up in the morning. It means giving yourself the best chance at recovery for today. If you're feeling a certain way, whether it's good or bad, that's okay. Let's figure it out. And I said, if I can do it, and like I said, those guys gave me the opportunity, and I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. And it's allowed that to me still have that same feeling of being a part of that team. And now I realize there's so many people like that's dealing with this stuff, man. And so many people like talking, that they dealing with it. And then I'm still doing basketball where, I'm helping so many people with that.
Yeah.
Now I just added another piece to it where with mental health and being able to take care of yourself. So it all came full circle. And, thanks to guys like you and Eric and Tim, that's one of my strengths that I've always had. Like, even if I go through a rough time, like I'm gonna learn, I'm gonna listen, I'm gonna learn, I'm gonna watch the guys that been down that road before, I'm gonna follow them, I'm gonna ask questions, I'm gonna stay locked in. And then now I feel like I'm back to like that's what got me to LaSalle, that's what got me to the NBA, that's what kept me in there. And then it's like it's almost like a rebirth, it's like a rebirth, you know. And I feel like I'm 25 again because I got a new life. I got a new way of seeing things. And it's good. It's just like you said, it's that sunny side of the street. It's a great thing.
This is a little bit better than our Inside the Armor chats, I think. So
Man,
yeah, it was good stuff.
Yeah, no, man, I just appreciate you and like I said, this is a family. Like, this is guys that's in recovery, guys that support. It's a brothership. And I just thank everybody at Caring, and I just want to be able to help. What about the people that never got a chance to experience a place like Caring? Me coming from Philly, and I know it's a lot of people that's dealing with a lot that may not have that opportunity to go to a place like that, and you and me know about that. So I want to be that guy. I want to be able to help those people that maybe not can't get that kind of help, that level of care that we receive. And I want to work with guys like you and Timmy and Eric and Karen to help make that happen and helping people that continue to help people that maybe won't be able to get a chance to go through those doors, but we can help and still care about. So that's kind of what I want to do.
Doug Overton, I can't thank you enough for the time, man. I'll send you this link. We'll probably have this done on Wednesday, so I'll send it to you then.
All right, thanks, buddy.
Hey, one more thing. What's next for you? Like, do you see yourself as like the next John Lucas or something like that, where you can fuse this mental health stuff with basketball?
Yeah, but that's kind of what I want to do. Whether it's in Philly, obviously being with Timmy and Eric every day at Synergy House, I'm learning so much from them. That maybe get an opportunity to do something like that. To branch off of that, maybe doing something in the Philly community.
Well, I look forward to it because I can feel it.
That's kind of and then I obviously keeping my roots in basketball too. Maybe helping student athletes, that type of thing. But yeah, you got it. That's it.
Coach, man, I appreciate the time. I really can't thank you enough.
Man. No, it's This is great. Thank you.
All right, we'll talk to you.
All right, buddy.
See you.
Peace.
Thanks so much for listening to The Payoff with Pete. Once again, I'm Pete Souza. And of course, we are part of the Rogue Media Network. All kinds of good podcasts you can find at roguemedianetwork.com. And of course, you can find this podcast and all those other ones wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, other spots like that.
This has been a Rogue Media podcast.
Join the ultimate celebration of digital content with its creators, passionate fans, and industry experts. It's all happening in downtown Waco across multiple venues on January 20th through the 22nd, 2023. Tickets are on sale now at roguecon23.com.